Hey, welcome back or welcome for the first time, whichever the case may be. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about fantasy football today. Today I'm going to talk about some wide receivers that you can get in rounds 8 through 16 that you probably don't want to pass on. If you saw my episode about the running backs that you can get in these rounds, I wanted to make the point. You need to be just as diligent drafting the best talent in rounds 8 through 16 as you were in rounds 1 through 7, because that's the way to build the best team possible. So here we go with some receivers in that range that you probably don't want to pass on. And I'm basing this on the leagues I've already joined and drafted in and guys I'm still seeing available in that range. First guy I'll talk about is Houston Texans wide receiver Tank Dell. Last year as a rookie, he did average 15 points per game in that Houston offense. He had some injuries, so we didn't even see a full season from him. Yes, they added Stephon Diggs. The ball's going to be spread out a little bit more, and that's why Tank Dell is falling to where he's available in rounds 8, 9, and 10. But he's, in my opinion, he's the best bet to draft a receiver from the Texans. Is he definitively better than Nico Collins? No. But Nico Collins has been getting drafted in rounds 3 and 4. I'm not going to spend a pick that high when there's this many receivers that the ball's going to be spread out to. If I draft a Texans receiver, it's going to be Tank Dell. In fact, he's the only one that I've drafted from that team thus far. You can get him around 8, 9, or 10. He's going to have some big weeks. He may not average 20 a game. He's probably going to have some weeks where he gets you that amount. And if you can pair him with some other receivers you get in your earlier rounds, he's well worth having on your team. Second guy I want to mention is Washington Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin. In 2023, he did average 12.3 fantasy points per game. This guy has had 1,000 yards or more receiving, I believe, for 4 consecutive seasons. He's been on some bad teams, so a lot of people don't think that highly of him, maybe. But he's a clear-cut number 1 target in that offense. He's going to get a lot of opportunity. And he's going to be playing with the rookie quarterback, and that may scare some people off. But I've got one question for you. Do you know who Jayden Daniels is? Because he's not just your average quarterback. He is one of the fastest, most exciting, most athletic quarterbacks that has ever been in the NFL. He's a guy he's got a strong arm, and he's going to get the ball to Terry McLaurin. Some of the number 2 and 3 receivers on the team may not get the volume. If anything, Jayden Daniels is going to look for his primary target, and then he may trust his legs and take off running. But when McLaurin's a primary target, and you got a guy that had over 3,800 yards and 40 touchdown passes last year at LSU, I think Terry McLaurin's in a position to have a pretty big season. You can get him typically in somewhere between rounds 8, 9, and 10. He is well worth having when you can get him in that range. The next guy I'll talk about is Marquise Brown, now with the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year with the Arizona Cardinals, he averaged 9.6 points per game. You may hear that and think, well, Jared, why are you even talking about him? Here's the thing. He was a first-round pick coming out of Oklahoma, drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. In his 5 NFL seasons, yes, he's only had 1,000 yards one time. Last year with Arizona, he had a lot of injury problems. So he had under less than 600 yards. He had some issues with his heel. He ended the season on injured reserve. He also played in a lot of games where he was hurt and was just trying to make the best of it. If he's healthy, he's now playing in Kansas City. He's in a great offense. Very likely to be their number 1 receiver. Yes, I'm aware of Xavier Worthy. Yes, I'm aware of Rashee Rice. Marquise is more proven. And if you know anything about that team, if you're fast and you can run routes and get open, Patrick Mahomes is going to get the ball to you. And Patrick Mahomes is pretty darn good at getting the ball who he wants to get the ball to. If you can get Marquise Brown, I've been seeing him on the board in rounds 9, 10, sometimes even 11. My goodness, he's definitely worth having on your roster, especially when you can get him in that range. Next guy is Deontay Johnson, now with the Carolina Panthers. Last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Deontay Johnson did average 10.9 fantasy points per game. He's now on a team where he's going to be the clear-cut number one receiver. I understand the Panthers didn't have a great season. I understand a lot of people aren't that confident in Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young's still got time to show us what he's made of. Deontay's young, fast, athletic. He's going to most likely, almost for sure, be Bryce Young's number one target. And even as poorly as that team's win-loss record was last year, Adam Thielen, who's in his 30s, last season for the first half of the year was one of the top scoring wide receivers in all of fantasy. You want to tell me Deontay Johnson's not able to put up some pretty good numbers in that same offense a year later? Okay, you want to take that risk and not draft him, you go right ahead, but somebody in your league should. Next guy I want to talk about is Curtis Samuel, now with the Buffalo Bills. Last year with the Washington Commanders, he did average 9.8 points per game. Again, I know that's not amazing. I've been seeing Curtis Samuel still available in rounds 15 or 16. I've seen him go undrafted quite a few times. The guy's playing in Buffalo. Stephon Diggs is no longer there. Yes, their tight end, Dalton Kincaid, probably will get a lot of the targets and should, but there's a lot of passes still to go around, and Josh Allen is a very good quarterback. Curtis Samuel may not emerge as the clear-cut number one receiver, but he's going to have some games where he probably has some pretty big weeks. And if you can get this guy in the 16th round and just have him on the bench to maybe use in a certain situation, why on earth would you not want to do that? Your 16th round pick, you don't necessarily have to expect a whole lot. So if you can get a guy that can give you some productivity and actually help you win some weeks, you want them on your roster. Next guy I'll talk about, also with the Buffalo Bills, rookie Keon Coleman out of Florida State. For a lot of the same reasons I mentioned Curtis Samuel, I'll say about Keon Coleman. Yes, he's a rookie. They spent a pretty high draft pick on him. They're going to want to utilize him in their offense. There's a lot of opportunity to go around with the absence of Stephon Diggs. Maybe Curtis Samuel emerges as a number one receiver. Maybe Keon Coleman does. You can get Keon Coleman probably in round 10 or 11. Why not take that risk? He's in a good opportunity with a very good quarterback to get some really good targets and plenty of opportunity. Next guy I'm going to name is another rookie for the Los Angeles Chargers, Ladd McConkey. The Chargers still have Justin Herbert. They do not have Keenan Allen. They do not have Mike Williams. They do not have Gerald Everett. They also do not have Austin Eckler, who's a very good pass-catching running back. That's a lot of targets that have to go somewhere. I understand with Jim Harbaugh coming over, he has said he wants to run the ball more, and that's great for their running backs. But when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, you don't pay him just to hand the ball off. Justin Herbert is still Justin Herbert. This is a guy that a couple of seasons ago had a 5,000-yard passing season. You got to throw the football. You got to take advantage of his talent. Those passes have to go somewhere. I think McConkey's probably going to be their number one receiver. He is in a great position to have an immediate impact. If you can get him in rounds 8 through 12, which is where I've been seeing him, he is well worth having on your bench and keeping him away from one of your league mates who can draft him and use him against you. Next up, I have Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Last year, he did average 12.5 fantasy points per game, and that was with having some injuries. He's back now. Quite likely will be Jacksonville's number one target. Again, he may not be a league winner, but he's going to probably help you win some games, especially if you can get him in rounds 8 through 10. Pair him with some superstar receivers that you get in your early rounds. Christian Kirk is well worth having on your team to be able to plug into your lineup from time to time. Next guy I will talk about is from the Tennessee Titans, DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, I understand he's not in his 20s anymore, but last year with the Titans as their number one receiver, he did average 13.2 fantasy points per game. Will Levis now has another year of experience under him. Hopkins is still a pretty good receiver. Until proven otherwise, the guy can play football. He's going to get plenty of opportunities. He's usually on the board between rounds 8 and 10. For all the reasons I've been saying about all these other guys, DeAndre Hopkins is worth grabbing in that range. And the final guy I'll talk about today, second-year wide receiver from the Seattle Seahawks, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Last year didn't have the greatest season, 600-plus yards, 8.8 points per game. But just hear me out. He's almost always on the board in the rounds 8 through 12. Yes, they still have DK Metcalf. They've also got Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is 32 years old, and Njigba is about 10 years younger. He's younger. He's faster. I think he could emerge and actually become Seattle's number 2 receiver this year. Also, the Seahawks have a new offensive coordinator, a guy that was the offensive coordinator at the University of Washington last year, who had a 3-receiver system, and all 3 of those guys were good enough to get drafted this year. So Njigba, I think, will get plenty of opportunity. And even though he didn't have a monster year last year, as a sophomore at Ohio State, now his junior year he was limited to only 3 games because of a hamstring injury. But as a sophomore at Ohio State, Njigba was in a lineup and on a roster that included Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and a very talented freshman named Marvin Harrison Jr. And Njigba led that team in receiving yards with 1,600 and also caught 9 touchdown passes. The guy's got a lot of talent. We just haven't seen all of it on the NFL level yet. This could be the year that we see it, and he's well worth taking somewhere in rounds 8 through 11. So there's my 10 receivers that I would recommend drafting in that round. Number 11 that I would mention is not Gabe Davis. You can get him after the 8th round, but here's my question. Why would you do that? Let him go to the waiver wires. Let somebody else draft him. If I have to tell you why I'm not drafting him, you're probably not ready for fantasy football. But thank you all so much for stopping by again. If you liked the episode, please like it by hitting the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It will enable me to continue to bring you this type of content as well as many other types of content. Thank you all again for stopping by today. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. I hope y'all have a great week, and I hope I see you again real soon.